Colleagues, can you take our seats? Minister, thanks very much, and Deputy Minister, for joining this press conference. We are starting. Just want to apologize for starting a bit late, but now we're putting the show on the road. The Minister will obviously address the press conference, the nation, and the Minister is accompanied by the Deputy Minister, Ms. Chikunga. We also have the Acting Director General, Mr. Makapia, and we are also joined on the left of the Minister by the CEO of RTMC, Advocate Fikile Mbalula. And then we also have the Senior Investigator from RTMC, Mr. Bex, is also joining the panel today. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Fikile Mbalula. I'm the Head of Communications in the Department of Transport. So I'll be directing this program. So how we're going to do it, the Minister will deliver the statement, and thereafter would allow questions from the media. We would of course want to stick to the matter that we are here for, which is that of the accident. If there's any other issue that the Minister decides to add, we can then address that in terms of questions. But can we stick to what we are here for? We tend to sometimes get carried away, so we'll do that. Minister, at this point, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin Msibi, Head of Communications, Department of Transport, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Minister of Transport, Ms. Sindisiwe Chikunga, the CEO of RTMC, the Acting Director General, Mr. Makapia, the World Health Organization informs us that road traffic crashes result in the death of approximately 1.3 million people around the world each year, and leave between 20 and 50 million people with non-fatal injuries. More than half of all road traffic deaths and injuries involve vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists, and their passengers. The young are particularly vulnerable on the world's roads, and road traffic injuries are the leading cause of death for children and young adults aged 5 to 29. Young males under 25 years are more likely to be involved in road traffic crashes than females, with 73% of all road traffic deaths occurring among young males in that age. Developing economies record higher rate of road traffic injuries, with 93% of fatalities coming from low and middle income countries. In addition to the human suffering caused by road traffic injuries, they also incur a heavy economic burden on victims and their families, both through treatment costs for the injured and through loss of productivity of those killed or disabled. More broadly, road traffic injuries have a serious impact on national economies, costing countries 3% of their annual gross domestic product. Measures proven to reduce the risk of road traffic injuries and deaths exist and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has set ambitious targets for reducing road traffic injuries. On the early hours of the morning, 7 days ago on M7, the country experienced one of the most horrific road crashes between a bus and a truck. 15 died on the scene and 37 others were rushed to hospital with varying degrees of injuries for urgent medical attention. Let me ask all of us to bow our heads for a minute as a sign of respect to those who have passed away, and in silent prayer for speedy recovery of those who are still in hospital. I thank you. Since the advent of this gruesome accident, we relentlessly visited those in bereaved families. We know that almost all the people who died were the only breadwinners in their families, and they died while on their way to work to earn a living for their families. The hopes of many were dashed by the crash. Tomorrow, many of the deceased will be laid to rest. To assist the families to find closure, we have decided to come here to release a preliminary report on the investigation into the crash. International standards followed in these kinds of circumstances require that we monitor those who were injured for 30 days before a final report is concluded. I however wish to convey my sincere gratitude to the Road Traffic Management Corporation, RTMC Crash Investigation Team, the South African Police and Tshwane Metro Police Department for the diligent work they have undertaken to speedily investigate the accident and compile the report that we are able to release today. The report confirms that the crash happened in the early hours of the morning, around 5:10. The bus was traveling in the southerly direction with 56 passengers on board. The truck carrying furniture was traveling in the opposite direction. The truck veered from its original lane and into the path of the bus, resulting in head-on collision. It was established that weather conditions at the time of the crash were clear, and that this was ruled out as a contributory factor. The road was also found to be in fair condition and not likely to have been a cause of contributory factor in the crash. A full mechanical investigation was conducted on both vehicles and confirmed that there were no mechanical defects or failure that contributed to the occurrence of the crash. It was found that both vehicles were in a roadworthy state before the crash. The report further states that both drivers had valid EC1 driver's licenses and professional driving permits, PRDPs. Though one of the drivers was a foreign national, he had all the requisite documentation, including the valid register. The driver that was driving the truck is the one that we refer to as the foreign national. The report concluded that driver error is the major contributing factor to the cause of the crash, because the truck driver allowed his vehicle to veer off its original lane of travel onto the oncoming lane, resulting in a head-on crash. The contents of the report will be brought to the attention of the Directorate of Public Prosecution for their consideration. It is unfortunate and lamentable to the extreme, since both of the drivers died, and consequently, no one can be charged either for reckless and negligent driving and or culpable homicide. In this circumstance, this matter will be the subject of an inquest, and the presiding officer magistrate assigned with this case will have to make a finding after the leading of evidence by eyewitnesses. Ladies and gentlemen, road crashes involving buses and trucks are a matter of grave concern to the Department of Transport and government in general. These crashes place a heavy burden on the health sector and the economy as they involve a high number of fatalities where the victims were economically active members of society. The pain is felt deeply by households that are left without breadwinners and children who are left often without a parent to guide them through the challenges of life. An analysis conducted by RTMC on major crashes involving buses and trucks countrywide from January 1, 2020 to January 15, 2022 reveals the following. Buses were involved in 18 major crashes in the period in which 178 people were killed and 600 suffered various degrees of injuries, whereas trucks were involved in 71 major crashes in which 463 people killed and 431 suffered various degrees of injuries. Clearly, this is an unsatisfactory situation because we know that road crashes are avoidable if people exercise necessary and respect the rules of the road. The RTMC will in the next few days urgently convene the National Road Safety Steering Committee to look at impactful intervention that need to be implemented by all provincial and local traffic authorities to bring down the number of horror crashes in the country. A disturbing trend that has been observed recently is that more trucks are avoiding national and regional routes and using arterial municipal roads. As you can see, this was a municipal road. Is it M17? Yes, this was a municipal road which heavy trucks should not be using. They should be using the national road, either the N3, N12, N8, whatever you can mention. This is where that horror crashes involving multiple fatalities are now happening. The NRSC will have to revise their traffic officer deployment strategy and ensure that arterial routes receive a high priority to push heavy vehicles back onto the national and regional routes. A plan will also be put in place to hold truck and bus operators accountable for the conduct of their drivers on the road, even if this warrants legislative amendment. The National Land Transport Act clearly stipulates that operators must exercise control over their drivers. Where evidence exists that an operator failed in their duties, criminal charges must be brought against them as well. Ensuring effective implementation of the SAFE system is essential to the attainment of global goal to halve road traffic deaths by 2030. Declarations, resolutions, and accession to conventions alone will not yield improvements unless they are translated into concrete actions in our country, improving the road safety situation in a country that requires a continued and sustained cycle of planning, executing, and evaluating programs. Implementing a continuous cycle of road safety improvement should begin with an assessment of the existing road safety system, followed by the development, execution, and evaluation of national and local plans of action by different actors within the system. This points to the importance of sharing of responsibility by different government agencies and involving, through consultative processes, other stakeholders, including the public, the private sector, and civil society, in improving road safety in our country. As I conclude on this part, I wish to take this opportunity to thank the emergency services personnel who quickly responded when last week's crash occurred. Their quick response helped in ensuring lives were saved. A sincere word of gratitude also goes out to nurses and doctors that continue to treat the injured. The country is proud to have men and women of their caliber. I also thank the crash investigation teams and the members of forensic pathology for diligence shown in completing their work in the shortest time possible, thus allowing families to have closure. To them I say, keep up the good work, and we are honored to have you in our services. As we take the country into our confidence, we simultaneously provide the affected families with the copies of the crash investigation report by close of business today. Since the occurrence of the accident, government has been hard at work, as we always do when we are confronted with accidents of this magnitude. Providing social relief through the Department of Social Development. I wish to thank the Minister of Social Development, Lindy Zulu, and her team who worked with us in this accident to ensure that families do get social relief and support. Support through social workers and all of that. Road Accident Fund assisted both families, all families, those hospitalized and the bereaved families with social benefits, burial assistance, and claiming process as legislative requirements. This is the work we do anyway when we are confronted with a disaster of this magnitude everywhere in the country where these accidents do occur. Now, I wish to also address the issue of the trucks that is before us here today, and that we have been seized with this matter for quite some time. On the 15th of December 2021, the Minister of Transport met with key role players in the freight industry, more especially the trucking sector. The meeting came at the backdrop of what was then a worrying trend of some truck drivers blocking some of our national roads repeatedly as a way to express their grievances. I've been on the ground in most of these blockages, addressing the truck drivers on the ground. It took me hours to convince them to unblock the roads, the main arteries of our country in terms of economic delivery for the country. I've done this alongside with Minister of Labor sometime, and supported by the police, Minister Fikile, and with his generals. They've always been with us to unblock the roads where they've been blocked by the truckers. The meeting of the 15th December spent a long time discussing this issue and ultimately expressed an unequivocal statement to condemn these acts of road blockages, as they are not only unlawful but also have a huge potential to sabotage the economy and result in job losses. Arising from this meeting, a task team was established. The constituted by representatives from government, truck drivers, truck owners, organized labor in the freight industry, as well as other role players with respective bargaining chamber, noting that the challenges facing the truck industry were diverse and went beyond just the transport sector, and further noting that there was already a task team established by Cabinet, which is referred to as the Interministerial Committee led by Minister of Labor, Minister Nglesi. So this task team we established in transport because it affects our industry, and also it affects the movement of the economy in the country, and as a result, it results in sabotage of the economy. So I cannot overemphasize that. The focus and scope of the task team established on the 15th December 2022 was narrowed down specifically to transport matters. And the bone of contention, as it is surely public knowledge by now, key among the contentious issues which have been raised in discussion with the industry, more especially truck drivers, have been the issue of what they say is shrinking job opportunities for South African truck drivers, as more and more companies are continuing to prioritize employment of foreign truck drivers over the locals. There's also been complaints about general conditions of service in the industry and a direct plea for enhanced enforcement measures in that regard. In respect of employment of foreign truck drivers, the general plea has been that there should be a concerted and integrated effort from government to review the existing regulatory and legislative framework to create a conducive environment that places South African truck at the peak of the freight industry job opportunities, and further ensure that their conditions of service are legally compliant and humanly appropriate. In contributing towards this objective, there are also specific activities which the Department of Transport itself is supposed to implement. These are the issues which the task team was then entrusted to implement and ensure that they are resolved. Progress to date, since its establishment, the task team has already had a number of meetings, the latest of which was scheduled to take place on Tuesday, 14 June 2022. Indeed, this meeting took place as scheduled. Following this latest meeting, the task team is now at a point where an agreement has been reached with all role players, including, among others, the truck drivers represented by ATDF, All Truck Drivers Foundation, truck owners represented by TASA, Truckers Association of South Africa, and RAF Road Freight Association, and organized labor represented by Motor Transport Workers Union. So I see in the media discourse, when we are confronted with this difficult question, some who are participants in this particular process seek to insulate themselves from the problem, as though that this is a problem of truck drivers only and the owners are not part of the problem. So as long as we are not resolving the issues on the table in the platform we've provided, which will mitigate the levels of blockages on our road, which in no way they are justifiable. And we condemn in strongest terms the blockage of the road, and that is why we have taken it upon ourselves to engage with the truckers, with the truck industry all around, and not talk to one section in this regard. The next immediate steps will then be for all members within the task team to sign off the implementation plan that had been agreed upon at the present moment, which will serve as a blueprint that guides everybody on which issues to focus on and within which timelines these matters must be attended to. Because of the diverse nature of the interest which is informed by each member's mandate, it has not been easy journey for members to develop this implementation plan and agree on key priority issues to be placed in the plan. Whilst we're talking with the with everybody around the table, the strike and the blockage is started, and which to us then does not give negotiations a space. And especially where we think that we have narrowed areas of differences for an agreement and implementation going forward. It is therefore commendable that we have now arrived at a point where all members agree on the set of issues which we all need to work collectively and individually to resolve in terms of challenges in the sector and usher much needed next steps. And just to run over some of the issues that have been discussed and that will form part of the plan of action. The first one is the enforcement of the visa requirement and the issuance of the work permit. And the expected outcome on this particular matter is the restriction of the use of temporary visas for employment as truck drivers and investigate the issuing of work permits. And the commitment in this regard is that we'll invite the relevant department to conduct information session on this particular matter of work permits. The second point is the validity of foreign driving license and the validity of the South African driving license issued to TRN holders. And the fourth aspect is the interface between INATIS, Department of Home Affairs and SARS to address the issue of number of notices and fines issued, as well as number of fraudulently issued driving license and a number of people in possession of driving license issued with TRN. The fifth point is the registration with the labor laws, the ATDF and other organizations to provide details on this particular matter. And we are expected to ensure that all trucking companies to register with the bargain council, and the assessment of drivers to ensure compliance with domestic legislative framework. The other point is the registration of operator in terms of Section 45 of the NRTA. And the last point is the assessment of the requirement for an operator permit card per National Road Traffic Act to determine its effectiveness. So these are some of the issues that will form part of the plan of action with regard to our engagement with the trucking industry, which does not only affect drivers, but also owners. But the part of government role in this regard is to regulate. May it be in relation to foreigners, and at the same time in terms of work permits in the country, and also ensure that, which is the major complaint in terms of registration, we make it a point that foreign nationals in our country are subjected to the laws of South Africa. These are the issues that we are discussing. And we have not been sleeping on the job in terms of dealing with the matters. And I get surprised when people think that these are easy matters. We understand that the police must come in and everybody else. We can't allow the blockage of the road. But partly we must not be sleeping on the job in terms of doing what is necessary to engage with this industry and find a solution on these matters. And should anybody not abide with the resolution and the decisions we have agreed upon, then there will be a justifiable act for anyone who blocked the road to be dealt with, because that equals to economic sabotage. So it does not mean that we have closed our ears and we have not been talking to the trucking industry. Even at the point the strike was announced, we were in the boardroom from the 15th of December, when I thought that we have an agreement. And I said to Durban, when Gavin, who was part of the traffic industry, when we went to meet with the Durban Chamber, said that there is an agreement that very soon, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be announcing. When we're in the process of finalizing that, then the truckers took to the streets and blocked the roads. And they said to me, Minister, the constituency we represent says that there's been meetings after meetings. Now, how are you going to get an agreement without a meeting? So we need to engage and find a solution on this matter. Department of Labor must come to the party. And that's where we are. On Sunday, 19 June 2022, the Ministry of Transport, together with the respective role players in the task team, we are expecting to bring finality to this agreement and formalization of the task team now that will coordinate this work in terms of the plan of action, which will serve as a transport working stream of the Interministerial Committee, which is chaired by Minister Nglesi and deputized by Minister Aaron Motsoaledi. We will further sign off the implementation plan, which has been finalized and adopted on Tuesday. I've spoken to elements of that implementation plan. And 14 June 2022, we have also been in discussion with regard to this. Now, we will, on Sunday, 19th, if I'm not mistaken, Sunday 19th, we'll have a physical meeting with all the role players to finalize the plan of action. And the Minister of Labor will be in attendance. The Minister of Home Affairs will be in attendance. And the truck owners and the truck drivers will also be in attendance of this meeting. And then immediately when we are done with that meeting, we'll be able to brief the public about the outcome of that meeting. If there are any disagreements out of that meeting, we'll be able to talk about those and how we go about. But one of the basic rules that we need to agree upon is that once we are open to this discussion like we have been, I know that the truckers themselves have raised the issue that this has been like the tap and the lipstick way, meaning we are ad hoc. We rush to engage and we disappear. And that is why I've sought to close that gap, because from the 15th of December, I established a task team to deal with these issues from the point of view of the Department of Transport. And we brought everybody on board to negotiate, so to say, on these issues and basically find each other. And we may deal with all issues, but it's going to need us to work together to address some of the issues that relate to the workplace situation, which belong to the bargaining chamber, for the unions to resolve those issues with their employers. We are equally aware of what is happening. And last week I was addressing the truck industry convention in Durban. I spoke about these issues and I talked about what is equally their responsibility to bring us close to a solution on these particular matters. Now, they will not be resolved in the streets, from the boardroom to action on those issues that we have agreed on. So I'm looking forward to that particular meeting. So when you say that we don't talk, it's not that we don't talk because there is no activity and action on our part. We don't talk because we don't want to speak outside the fold. We want to speak when there is an agreement, which we promised South Africans, that out of this process there will be an agreement that we will sign off. Government, business, and the workers in relation to these particular matters that they've actually raised. So they are not as easy as they are being projected. When the roads are closed, you are inconveniencing the economy, everybody. And law enforcement will have to come in. And law enforcement has been coming in because they are looking also at these negotiations. It's not like we are a government of scope and donor. Scope and donor is going to be the last resort, and it's going to be heavy. It's not like we're toothless or we're sleeping on the job. We are not. The industry knows that. And I'm not allergic to criticism of government and myself, but they must know that we're around the table. And when these things are happening, we can't all the time say, where is law enforcement? Because Fikile will be the first to say, I am depleted, so release me to attend to other issues. And then he can only do that if he sees that we are doing our job. But if he sees there is an agreement and people are breaking the agreements and are doing unlawful things, we've got no choice. We've got to come hard on the perpetrators. And it's going to be like that. But before that it happens, we must find each other around the table. We can't talk past each other and go different directions and think that the solution will come from elsewhere. Department of Labor, Department of Transport, we must take responsibility of this journey and finalize the matters. And also the workers on the other part, as well as the private sector. The economy that is being depleted, that is being bruised, that is battered, and is the economy that we seek to build. So it is not in our interest to have unlawful strikes that are not sanctioned, and just people wake up and close the road. And then they target the entry all the time. And then we can't go to the harbor. The goods cannot move from the production line to the areas where they are destined. Our rail sector is in the state it is in, of which through our own rail policy which we have passed, we seek to address that situation. That the TFR can be able to move smoothly from the production line to the harbor and all of that, to address some of the challenges that were faced. That is how our policy talks about concessions. Because government cannot address these things on its own without interventions of the private. And the private sector is coming to the party. We've got big announcements that are action-oriented that are coming your way, that include concession in the rail sector so that we relieve our highways of this burden of heavy trucks on the road, and that get to be used whenever people seek to do unlawful things on the road. We understand, as I conclude, the concerns of the workers, and we share their concerns, and we work with them to address those. And we want to appeal to them that they must not run out of patience. They must work with us, because when they block the roads, they are interrupting the road network and the economic activity in the country. At some point, if these have got to go on and on, it cannot go unabated. We'll be resolute. And I wish to thank everybody as I conclude, the South African Police Service, General Mkhwanazi, and the generals of the police, General Masemula, and the Minister of Police for working with us on this journey to bring about law and order. And also for the cooperation of those who understood that we are on a path of negotiations, and they agreed to open the roads up until last night, from Bloemhof to Verenen and everywhere else in the country. So we're looking forward to Sunday, and I hope that we conclude the action plan and the implementation. So once we conclude on Sunday, either on Monday, we'll be able to inform the press and the public about our agreement and all these issues. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to pause there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. There's only two issues on the table. It's the feedback on the crash The second one is the intervention of government on the trucking industry, the issues that we are confronted with there. So what will happen? If there's any other issue that we have outside of this, we have the Director, Media Liaison in the Minister's Office, Mr. Hassan is there, so you can have a one-on-one outside of, on the sidelines of this conference, after the conference. So at this point, I'll take 2 sets of 3 questions, and then we'll check the appetite after that if there's any further questions. And the Minister will, of course, lead the responses, and he will delegate who must respond to which question. So that's how we're going to conduct the Q&A session. At this point, can I get an indication by show of hands? And you must then introduce yourself and the news agency you represent. I've noticed one hand here. For now, we only have one. Shopsile, can you help us?
Good morning, Linda Mnisi from Newsroom Africa. Minister, you did not touch on the issue around the death toll, so I'm assuming that it hasn't risen. My questions also relate to the RAF. We know that it will pay based on how serious the case is. Have we determined how many cases are serious amongst those who are injured? Also, some clarity relating to the issue around the truck driver. You've already indicated that he is non-South African. Will the RAF be paying a death benefit to his family? Yeah, I think I'm sorted.
Any other hands? Minister?
So I hope you don't get too colored, meaning you don't get to come back because of the issues that are raised. Thank you very much. I don't know, Advocate, you want to answer?
Thank you, Linda. As the matter stands, the death toll has not risen. However, by law, we have 30 days to monitor the situation and ensure that we integrate those that will subsequently succumb to the death. The other one that you placed in terms of the road accident fund, the law as it stands, the guilty party or the party assumed to have caused the accident is not entitled to any benefit because of the negligence on that side. You'll understand that the law is based on the apportionment of negligence in that situation. Now we know as a fact that the driver of the truck veered to the other side, to that issue. He is, of course, the person that has caused the accident. And until the investigations are done, he's excluded from the benefiting. Thank you, Minister.
How many serious cases?
Well, as we visited, there were 5 people who were in the high intensive care unit, which doctors were dealing with them, and the subsequent 4 had also gone on to some operations that related to the ligaments, and they have been stabilized. Even those that were at the high care unit were indeed stabilized. We have not, of course, observed any other complications other than the situation that they are stable within the IC unit.
Any other question? Hands? Looks like, Minister, you were clear, crystal clear. There is a follow-up here.
Just one last one from me. Minister, on the trucks, we know that over the past week or so, we saw threats around a national shutdown. Can we get to a point where there is a shutdown within that particular industry if, for example, you don't reach a consensus really around the issues that are currently at hand?
Yeah. Yes. We need to get to that point this Sunday where the option of being taken by surprise of the shutdown it's not even an option. It is anarchy. And the only way to deal with anarchy is to stamp the authority of the state. Because if you undermine the rule of law, it means that you define yourself out of any civilized measure within society. Meaning, you can't be listened to. You have taken a route deliberately to undermine umthetho, the rule of law. So we need to address that with everybody involved, so as to understand that everybody must come to the center when there are differences and things are not being done. So the option of just going to the streets and closing down and doing as people wish and all of that, the leniency of government and the state and allowing them to express themselves in a peaceful way, it seems not understood sometimes by our people. So they mean that you must close the roads, inconvenience others, inconvenience production, undermine the economy, and drag down the economy to the point where it will not be in a position to respond to the challenges that we're facing as a country. So we are opening a space of negotiation and engagement. And we understand when they raise the fact that we negotiate, but implementation, we are thin. To a certain extent, they do have the point on some of the issues that they are raising, but an option of closing down the roads and all of that will not be tolerated going into the future. And we have to stamp our authority on that. So the measures we are taking of getting action plan, an action plan, it says you agree on the following item, and this is the deadline in which this item should have been resolved. And if it is not resolved within this deadline, there should be cogent reasons that all sectors involved can then give reasons why this matter is not done. If it is government, we must know that it is government. But these matters are receiving our attention. So in my view, as honestly speaking, I don't think the act of closing down the roads and main arteries of economic activity in our country is justifiable. And it must be condemned. And I think it affects our economy, and it will lead to the joblessness and the bloodbath, adding into the numbers of unemployment bloodbath that we're seeing in our country. So that cannot be allowed. So I hope out of our discussion this Sunday, we should find each other on those, so that we agree on the terms that we will not have anyone blockading the roads and so on going forward.
Thank you so much, Minister. That it seems it brings us to the end of the conference. So far, we only have one record of one-on-one with the NCA, so Minister would want you to take that. To members of your media, thank you so much for coming to support us, and thank you so much for continuing to do so, because you always ensure that you are there when we need you. And I would like to thank you, Minister, for addressing us, and the Deputy Minister. Thank you. Thank you so much.